Hi, so today we're breaking down 2016's Nerve with Dave Franco and Emma Roberts, based on the 2012 book of the same name by Gene Ryan. This is your spoiler warning. If you proceed past this point, I'm assuming you've seen the film and or read the book, or you just don't care. So yes, it's an adaptation, and that brings with it a lot of issues, that's common to any adaptation. Certain things change for the better, some for the worse, some added, some removed. It's standard fare. But there is one particular element that caught my eye, and I've not read the source material myself. I've just read Goodreads reviews which have given me a basic understanding, and this one particular element is the character of Nancy. Now, I'm not, as I say, going to go through every single change. This I think is important, because in the film she just seems an overprotective, controlling parent, not really what you want as a teenager, even though as an adult you might understand that they were doing it for your own good. The only reason we're given in the film is a very quick throwaway line that can be missed, and I think I did miss it if I recall on my first viewing, that her brother died in an accident. Now in the book this is expanded upon better, and we're given the sort of logical justification that her parents felt they failed in not protecting him, so they've overcompensated, kind of grounding her for minor things. They're a lot more controlling from what I've seen in the book, but again, they've got that extra justification as well, so it all makes it a lot more sensible. It makes it more sympathetic to their plight as parents who just want the best for their children and already feel like they've failed once. But like I say, this isn't a comparison video. Let's look at the film on its own merits, and it starts with my favourite thing ever, visual exposition. It's not perfect, but it embraces the fact that it's a different medium, and I always respect that. Show, don't tell. That's the whole... that's the golden rule of film, show don't tell, and I think they try, as I say, quite well. It's not perfect execution, but they try and do a fair job. But there is one major thing with this whole film that really is the hook, that sparked my analytical brain, and that was reality TV, because there's elements of that in this. We see reality TV stars from way back, before it's got to how it is now, from way back when it was like your everyman kind of series, and you made celebrities out of it. Then obviously you started to get ones just made of celebrities, and eventually we had things where people have got all this fame, fortune that had kind of just been because they were on the telly a bit, and certain people did really well from these reality TV deals. Some even got a presidency out of it, which is great. But in all seriousness, there is that element now that if you're an established celebrity, you may get a reality TV series like the Kardashians, or if you do a very specific thing like own a pawn shop, PAWN. And the everyman reality show seems to have disappeared for the most part. It's died a bit of a death, but there is a reason for that, and I think this is a stronger link to the film in many ways, and that's this whole thing that I'm using to discuss this with you. YouTube. We can stream on Twitch and things like that as well. We can stream our lives. We can show elements of what we want to show the world. We can do challenges and dares and put them up for people to watch. I mean, I'd never do anything like that at all. Just ignore that. That's not real. But we trade our dignity for views and subscribers and sometimes ad revenue if we're lucky. And it's not that dissimilar to this film. These people are doing these dares, and in the first half of the film, and it is about halfway, I timed it, in the first half it's all fairly innocent, there's nothing too drastic. It's more just about embarrassment and some kind of petty theft potential. There's nothing like sort of life-threatening until, as I say, about the second half. But it's entirely feasible that this is an extension of what already happens, with YouTube and these reality TV shows. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to look at the character of V to really get an understanding, because she's like our analogue. She doesn't know the ins and outs of Nerve. She's not doing it. She's not a player. She's barely even a watcher. So we enter through her. And it's quite interesting how her character, she may already have this kind of cautious nature. It's exacerbated obviously by Nancy, but she may already have this cautious nature because she seems quite content being on the outside taking the photos, not necessarily participating. And Tommy's a great sort of companion for that. He likes to not be all under the social pressures. Sid is completely the opposite, and it's quite sad that she feels that V's life is wasted almost by her not embracing risk. Now, not to get into, sort of a massive anthropological discussion, but I feel that the world thrives on both the risk takers and the more cautious of us. The risk takers are the one going, let's see what happens if I poke the bear, if you will. And the cautious ones are watching and going, right, now I know what happens if you do that, I will not poke a bear. It's why I think we survived past the first few millennia. There is that balance of, people who are taking that risk and people who are being cautious and thinking it out and really sort of paying attention to the cause and effect of it all. So I think Sid wanting V to change is actually counter to really what society needs. And, in a way, I think that's borne out by the flow of the film. When obviously later on she doesn't like what's happened, even though she wanted it to happen, but we'll get to that. So of course, after all this pressure and, just thinking about it a bit, she goes, what's the harm? What am I going to lose? So she signs up as a player and gets the rather terrifying orientation video with the really disturbing Rule 3.
There are 3 rules. 1. All dares must be filmed on the player's phone. 2. There are only 2 ways to be eliminated. Fail or bail. 3. Snitches get stitches. Thank you for keeping Nerve a secret. Good luck, player.
Which even before the end, when we know that they take this kind of thing seriously, does sound ominous, considering it's a synthesized voice. It's not a real person telling us this. It's all behind a bunch of different mirrors and masks. And from what we learn later on through Tommy, this is like dark web stuff, which if you thought deep web was, the pinnacle of the hidden internet, dark web is far beyond that. And these are the kind of levels that these people are working in. And immediately, as soon as she gives consent, as soon as she says, yes, I'm a player, it trawls through her social feeds to get information about her. It gets into her bank account. She never provided that directly. It knows. It hunts it down. Even though it's a joint account and they technically don't have the permission of Nancy, it doesn't matter. They can do it. This is the level that they operate in. And as I say, when you couple it with all of those rules, it's quite terrifying. But of course, all this trawling through data is how they get information such as her favourite book, which is obviously where Ian comes into the picture, or as we know him at the end of the film, Sam. Reading her favourite book. That was all planned. The whole thing was made later in the film about, sort of how everything was staged, but this is really where it starts. Even from this initial point, he was told, have that book, sit there, she will hopefully latch onto you. I mean, there's a lot that's riding on coincidence and happenstance, but it works out because Hollywood. But it's really interesting to see that, all of these systems of control are working on V. And on that topic, I just want to sort of sidetrack, because it's quite interesting how we see Tommy goes along a bit. He's like, all right, do a couple, see what you feel, and then he's really kind of against it, And I realised something in this moment. Everyone wants control of V. Nancy, Tommy, Sid, the whole group of friends, Liv. They all want control of V. And isn't it entirely natural that she'd rebel against this somehow? And unfortunately, the person she's rebelling against most are the ones who are overt in their control, i.e. her mother. But even Tommy, saying, you shouldn't do this. He's trying to control her. He's saying she shouldn't do it because he doesn't agree with it. But it's her life. And I think, whilst there's a lot of darkness about this, how putting yourself out there can be quite a dangerous venture, I think there's also an element of listen to yourself in this. There's that kind of darkness tinged with an optimism. It's like, listen to yourself, trust your own instincts, because who knows you better than you? So of course we, going through this kind of innocuous part of it, everything's quite fun and light, like I say, until about halfway in the film. Tommy reluctantly signs up as a watcher with the great URL, by the way. It's nerve.com/player-or-watcher, but in kind of leet speak, there's a lot of number letter replacements. You can see it here on the screen, and I just think that's brilliant. Again, a lot of these things where you're using what's on the screen, the phone flip, quite funny as well. All these different things, that just would work so well in a visual medium, and I love the fact they embraced it. But all these things happen. It's quite fun and everything, and then it really starts to get real. Sid obviously sort of having the sort of breakdown almost. It's like she's saying she's concerned for V, because that's the way that she can make herself not look bad. If she turns around and goes, well, I wanted her to rebel and I wanted her to take risks, but I don't want her to step on my toes, she'll just sound very self-centered, whereas she's saying, I'm really worried that she's going to take it too far. It sounds concerned, it sounds like she cares. And of course that's what she wants. She wants to still look good out of it, as we all do. I don't think any of us ever would go and say, you're making me look bad, so stop it. We tend to go, oh, I'm really worried for you. It's human nature. We protect our self-image, especially with people like Sid who are very socially minded. And I love the fact that Liv calls her out for this. You know, it's kind of like, I wanted her to do this. It's like, yeah, you wanted her to do this. Now she's doing it. What have you got to complain about? This is what you wanted. She's doing what you wanted her to do. Accept it. So of course we then get into the dangerous territory, you know, where Sid fails and you get the fail montage, and like I say, it's about halfway through and it really shows the dangerous side. But another thing crops up in this as well, which is Tommy's discovery that Ian's played before. They've mentioned the Seattle incident a few times, but now we know that Ian was involved. And like I say, the stakes start to really ratchet up, and I love that. It balances it well. The tension builds naturally, organically. But there is an interesting thing, because when obviously this comes out to V, you know, it kind of makes her think, should I carry on? Should I actually try and stop this whole thing? This is wrong. And she only does that after she's told by Tommy that Ian's played before, and this whole thing was a setup. You know, his dare was to get her to the party, to have the falling out, and all this kind of thing. And I think that really Tommy is the architect of the finale. He's the reason that she wants out. She's the reason she wants the whole thing shut down, because of the potential danger and risk. And that's what leads to her telling the cop, who, by the way, seems very disinterested. Whilst he may be kind of ignorant of, like, saying, oh, it's just a game, he can hear people being quite aggressive, saying snitches get stitches, I'm sure, and he chooses to ignore it. Now, with the ties that they have, with the rather scary nature of their sort of tendrils and everything on the dark web, could they be paying off police? Very possibly, but then surely the ending where everyone's an accessory to murder could be handled. I don't know, but it's quite alarming that he doesn't seem to care that much. But obviously she's still taken, and like I say, we get into the real sort of, the real danger, the big finale where, you know, all the stakes are at play. So throughout, people are voting on dares and offering ideas, and of course at the end voting for V to be shot, and I'll get to that in due course. But it's because they're afforded something that we have as well, the shield of anonymity. Now inherently this is a neutral concept. Think of a mysterious benefactor who just wants to do good but doesn't want all the praise, so they do it anonymously. They know they've done it and that's good enough for them. The shield of anonymity. But this deals with the darker elements, where people can wish things on other people, you know, really horrible things that they would never say to someone's face because it's not them. It's a automatically generated or sometimes created username, an avatar that isn't their face, you know, not a picture of them or anything like that. And it's a lot easier to distance yourself. You know, it's been tackled in a lot of films, you know, about cyberbullying and things like that, and this is obviously yet another angle of it. But like I say, I'm not demonising anonymity. I think if we get rid of that, we ruin a good portion of the internet. I think clamping down when it's misused is great, but it's very hard to make that balance. But I think it's really helpful in this film, you know, because when people have their anonymity removed through the botnet vote, and suddenly it's such and such, you're an accessory to murder because you voted for her to be shot, it scares people. This is suddenly something that they've got to take responsibility for, and it's important that it was something of this nature. I think people are quite quick to say, why did it have to be something so drastic? Couldn't it have been, you know, anything that's just like, we know who you are, you know, you're a horrible person because you wish this upon someone. Well, if you're an accessory to an actual crime, by inciting it, by saying, if given a choice between saying, no, I don't want this to happen, and yes, I do, you're saying yes, you're an accessory, you're inciting that act. And I think that's the only way that they could really give that short, sharp shock to all of those people who voted yes. And yes, there were people who probably voted no, that's great. And although the film doesn't tackle it, in the real world there'd probably be sociopaths who didn't care and would vote yes, regardless. But, you know, simplified for film, I'll accept. But I think it needed to be something like that. And like I say, the fact that they are now active participants makes it more important. And I just want to sort of end with the ending. Now, I think from what I've read, the book's quite similar as well, where it kind of leaves it open for a sequel. And, you know, the fact that we see someone with the phone filming them. Now, I think the public would be burned. You know, although these are now in 2 separate cities, I think because these people knew about the Seattle incident, so word would spread. Again, you'd probably have sociopaths who would be like, well, fine, I'm just going to start up my own and do it anyway, and, you know, if I get people on board, great. But I think, for the most part, people would be scared. People would not want this to happen again. And maybe that's what we are meant to take from the film. You know, it's all fun and games, like the first half of the film. It's all fun and games, these little cinnamon challenges and things like that. You know, it's all fun for the views and the likes and the ad revenue or the Patreon support, you know, but be careful. And also, don't abuse anonymity. Try and be more the anonymous benefactor than the anonymous troll. So, yeah, it's an interesting film, a lot of food for thought of how we move forward and how we accept responsibility for our actions. So I'll be back next week with something completely different. So until then, as always, take care.